Hello Varlets. This video is totally unplanned for. It just so happens that a couple of things occurred that led to me deciding to release this video. First, I totally forgot to talk about Scriptures and Grims in my wishlist video and how I would have loved to see them be more relevant in the game. Secondly, and more importantly, the subject of Grimoires in Darktide has been kicking off in the Darktide subreddit. Numerous posts talking about whether Grims should be picked up, or other players willfully picking up Grims when the team isn't prepared for it, and the notion of leaving an unconsenting Grim holder for dead have stirred a lot of conversation and debate. You can also tell if a topic is hot on Reddit by how many meme posts have spawned from the original discussion. So, given this, I decided that I might as well throw my thoughts about Grims into the discussion as well. Feel free to use the comment section as a place to discuss and debate, but keep it civil. Disagreements and differing opinions should be expected, so come in with an open mind. Let's start from the top. There was a specific Reddit post where the OP stated that they left a Grim holder for dead after asking them to drop it since it wasn't going to be worth carrying around on a higher difficulty, especially in a high-intensity hunting grounds mission. The Grim holder decided to tell the OP to shove it, to which the OP then decided to leave the Grim holder to their fate against a Rager pack and Hounds. The responses in the comments were mixed, with discussions talking about how unsolicited Grim carrying should be treated, what Grim picking courtesy should be, how Grims in general aren't worth it, how Vermintide 2 treated its Grims, and how the book's contract from Melk should just be rerolled away into something else. Then, another post talking about the original post called into question if this is how we really are as a community, that we'd purposely let other players die because we disagreed with their actions. The comments of this post basically covered the same thing as the original one as well, and that brings us to the present. To avoid this video spiraling into an unproductive rant, I've structured it to help guide the discussion. We are going to talk about, first, what are grimoires and what do they do? Secondly, the key problems stemming out from this discussion, and thirdly, my proposed solution. With that, let's begin. Starting with what grimoires are in the first place. Grimoires, or Grims, are items that can be found in some missions. They are books leaking corruption that emit a glowing green aura. Picking up a grimoire corrupts the health of everyone on the team, causing them to first lose a flat 40 HP and then a further 1 HP every 10 or 13 seconds or so. Your health will continue to corrupt until you are left with 1 HP, leaving you 1 hit from death from pretty much anything. While the corruption over time can be cleansed with Medicae stations, health stims, enhanced medipacks and beacon of purity, the flat health that you lose can't be cleansed by any means. Healing up at a Medicae station temporarily cleanses it, but it immediately corrupts your health again. Once you've picked up a Grim, you can't pass it to anyone else. It's stuck to you until you decide to toss it away. You can throw a Grim away by pulling it out and then holding the left click. This destroys the Grim permanently. Now that we know what it does, why do people want to pick it up? There are 3 reasons why someone would want to pick up a grimoire. The first being that they want to try it for the additional rewards that come with successfully extracting with a grimoire in hand. Bringing back grimoires with you awards you additional experience and dockets, to the tune of up to plus 60% dockets and 25% more EXP. The second is because they are trying to complete their Melk contracts. While most everyone probably rolls away the book collection contract, perhaps they are stuck with it because they are too poor to re-roll it anymore. This then makes the additional dockets they gain from carrying the books even more attractive. The last is that they are looking for an additional challenge. Regardless of which reasons someone has to pick up a Grim, the problem of courtesy will always occur if there's no collective agreement. While one person might want to have the Grim for any reason, other people on the team might not. The burden of corruption can be very debilitating for a team that is barely scraping by on higher difficulties. It's also not hard to imagine that the additional health they would have had might have been enough to prevent a wipe or to pull off a clutch. And this is where I believe a lot of the tension is coming from. On one hand, if you want to do grimoires, regardless of your reasons, and you go and start a grimoire mission with the intent to pick up books, I think you should be allowed to. The mission is there for that reason. So exercising your agency to go to the mission board, select a grimoire mission, and play it is well within your rights as a player. Whether or not you are prepared to carry it or whether you will make it to the end with the grimoire in hand is an entirely different topic. So, if you actively choose a grimoire mission and you load into one, I think you should be at the very least be prepared to do Grims, even if you load into a game with other players who might not be skilled enough to do it but are doing it anyway. For all you know, they might be trying to get good and are learning to play under pressure. Now on the other hand comes the question, what if you quick play into a grimoire mission? There are 2 reasons why someone might want to choose quick play over selecting a mission manually. First, and probably the most desired reason, is because they want the extra material rewards. Running a quick play mission gives you 10% more materials upon successfully completing the mission. It ain't much, but 10% more is 10% more. Secondly, they want to avoid waiting for a game and just want to dive into the action. This is a desirable thing to do if you are short on time and just want to get stuck in. However, this is where the disconnect happens. The bonus 10% materials is the benefit given for giving up the ability to choose the mission you end up in. You are thrown into any mission that has an empty slot to fill, including Grimoire missions. Personally, I feel that if you choose to quick play for the extra rewards, you should be prepared to face whatever the mission will be. That's the point of quick play after all. So let me play out two scenarios for you now. The first one is what we are so used to hearing whenever the topic of grimoires pops up on Reddit. You are on a grimoire mission with no intention of picking up the grims. You just chose this mission because you liked the map, or because you wanted to kill the boss for your contracts and it just so happens to have grimoires. Then, some random person quick plays into your game and runs around looking for the grims. You kindly tell them that you don't want the grims and just want to play normally. Instead, they tell you that this is a grimoire mission, so picking up the grims is fine. The mission is made a little harder and takes a little longer. For one reason or another, and because your margin for error has been reduced, you end up wiping and pinpointing it to the grim holder. If they didn't go and pick up the grims when the team was already barely scraping by, you wouldn't have wiped and wasted your time and effort. Grimoires are bad and grim holders are morons. This second scenario is from the perspective of someone trying to run grims to see what it's like, or if they can handle the challenge of being corrupted. Remember, the reasons for picking up grimoires is entirely irrelevant. The player is exercising their agency to play the mission that's available to them. Wanting to find out if carrying grimoires is something you are skilled enough to do, you load into a grimoire mission with the intent of finding out. You manage to find a grimoire and pick it up. The burden of corruption isn't too bad just yet, but it's definitely making you pay a little more cautiously. The goal is to try and bring the grimoire back after all. Then, some random person quick plays into your game, looks at the team and sees that you are holding a grim. They then tell you that the grims aren't worth bringing around and that you should just throw it away. You retort by saying that you want to hold on to one because of the challenge. That was part of the point of loading into the mission after all. However, Mr. Quickplay, already having lost a mission or two to moronic grim holders, not unlike in scenario 1, has had enough, and decides to take their frustrations out on you and calls you an idiot for picking up the books. He then proceeds to do nothing to support you when you are overwhelmed, making what was once a manageable challenge into a wipe, because one person is maliciously trying to get rid of you and the grimoire. Excluding the scenarios where everyone collectively agrees or disagrees to carry the grims, in the above situations, both sides can be correct and wrong at the same time. The problem we are seeing here is a misalignment of objectives. Unsolicited grim carrying is a behavioral problem that is very difficult to fix, even with open lines of communication. Yet, insulting someone for picking up grimoires in a grimoire mission shouldn't be a thing. Why are you blaming someone for trying to play the game? If you're thinking that making grimoires more rewarding would solve the problem, I'd argue that doing that in its current state would create the following unintended consequence. First, increasing the rewards from grimoires doesn't solve the problem of other people not wanting them because it reduces their odds of completing the mission in the first place. Secondly, better rewards would encourage people to pick up the grims as often as they could, especially if they quick played into a mission with the additional 10% bonus. This would create an uptick in unsolicited grim carrying, especially if these people aren't prepared to deal with it and are banking on others to pull through. This would then lead to a rise in teams wiping because some random person decided to exercise their right to pick up a grimoire for more loot, which would then lead to more Reddit posts complaining about grimoires. Now that we've established the problem, let's take a step back to piece things together and look at the bigger picture. First, we have people who have their own reasons for wanting to pick up grims. The reasons don't really matter since it's them just exercising the right to play the mission that is given to them or available to them. Secondly, we have people who don't want grims because they are not prepared nor are they willing to deal with the additional burden of corruption and risk. And finally, in general, I think everyone agrees that rewards from grims simply aren't worth the risk for the most part. The key problems here are a conflict in player agency and the incentive of rewards. So if we really want to solve the grimoire problem, we must do it in a way that solves both the problems I stated here. The cheapest solution would be to remove grimoires altogether. No grims, no problems. Simple, quick, easy. But I propose a more interesting method. One that not only solves all the problems listed, but also fits into the wider picture of solving other problems I have mentioned in my wishlist video. I propose that grimoires be taken out from regular missions entirely, not including auric maelstroms, and be given its own special mission, similar to how the Karnak Twins has its own mission node. I would call this mission the Grim Retrieval. Grim as in both serious and dire situation, as well as the shorthand for Grimoires. The context for this mission would be that a powerful corruptive force is emanating from parts of Tertium. We need to get in there to contain, seal, and bring back the mysterious corruptive force for further study and destruction. This could be a continuation of the narrative from Hab Draco after we scan the evolving corruption around the tree with the eye in it. We are also informed that smaller corruption signatures could be faintly detected in various locations en route to the objective, and that if possible, we should try and investigate that too. This would be the cue to look for grimoires and bring them back. But there's more. The Grim Retrieval mission has a unique modifier, Oppressive Corruption. The presence of corruption is so strong in the area that you are constantly having your health corrupted throughout the mission. The longer you stay, the faster your health corrupts, and this would scale up and down depending on the difficulty level as well. This corruption can't be cleansed by any means, nor is it affected by corruption resistance. It's just that strong. This modifier alone makes it so that spending time to look around for grimoires becomes a risk in itself, never mind also picking up the books. Because of this, the corruption rate of grimoires needs to be balanced a little. Currently, grimoires move a flat 40 HP from picking it up, and then another 1 HP every 10 seconds or so. I would rebalance this to be a flat 30 HP from picking it up, and then another 1 HP every 15 seconds. The passive drain over time can be cleansed and mitigated by talents and items like normal. As part of this rebalance, I would also consolidate both grimoire resistance and corruption resistance into a single general corruption resistance value that worked on everything except the oppressive corruption modifier. Speaking of which, on top of Oppressive Corruption, Grim Retrieval missions would have other modifiers as well. While your health is being corrupted passively, Nurgle-blessed enemies will spawn more frequently, as well as there being a general increase in the number of melee and infested enemies you will be facing. In addition to all of that, monsters will have a greater chance of spawning as well, further adding more risk the longer you linger in the mission. All of this extra risk would be worth nothing if the rewards for doing so weren't great enough. For this reason, the Grim Retrieval, like Auric Maelstroms, have enhanced rewards, giving you a huge amount of ducats and experience, not that you really need the experience. But in addition to that, for every grimoire you manage to bring back, you add a 15% modifier to all material rewards at the end of the mission. This includes ducats, plasteel and diamantine. That's not all. In addition to this, a general change I would make to monster enemies would be that killing a monster gives you a bonus 5% additional rewards that stacks up to 3 times, for a total of 15% more rewards after killing 3 monsters. I made this a modifier instead of dropping materials upon death because, well, killing a chaos spawn and then plasteel popping out from it seems a little strange. I think it's more reasonable for it to be an additional reward for your service in purging the heretics at the end. But wait, there's one more thing I'd like to add to this special mission. Taking a page from the author's offensive once again, I think including a secret hard mode that can be activated after a certain point in the level would be fun. This could be something like triggering a series of buttons you find, or popping corruptor eyes that spawn throughout the level in obscure places. Whatever it may be, triggering this secret hard mode mid-mission causes poxwalkers to spawn endlessly until the end of the mission. This adds an element of overwhelming odds that you must fight through on top of the existing modifiers. What do you get in return for doing this? You get an additional 15% material rewards when you make it back, if you make it back. With this high-risk, high-reward iteration of the Grim Retrieval, we've solved the agency part of the problem. If you want to do anything grimoire-related, you have the choice to do it now and alongside other willing participants. Whether or not you can pull through is now entirely up to you and your team's collective skill and nothing to do with willingness and consent anymore. You chose to play a Grim Retrieval mission, so expect to deal with grimoires and prepare yourself accordingly. No excuses anymore. We've also solved the rewards part of the problem, making Grim Retrievals a pretty good source of gathering materials for the amount of time spent. This also means we've added another way to grind for plasteels and ducats on top of the other suggestions I have offered in my wishlist video. This mission also gives you a reason to test out other builds given how specific the conditions and modifiers are, offering more reason to diversify your loadouts and try out other things. If all of this wasn't enticing enough, we could add more penances and penance-related cosmetics to boot. Completionists and achievement hunters will have something to look forward to with this new mission. Here are some ideas I've cooked up for penances. Feel free to pause if you want to see what I've come up with. In summary, this is what my proposal looks like to solve the 2 key problems we've identified in this whole grimoire discussion. To conclude, even if you strip away all the extra suggestions and delusional ideas I have, there are only 3 paths to resolving this problem. Either we remove grimoires entirely from the game. No grimoires means no problems. Or We move Grimoires into its own node to solve the key problems and tensions arising from player behavior, streamlining the intent into a collective game mode. Or we enable better means of communication to facilitate common courtesy, hoping that players would just be civil and ask if Grims are in play or not. This would be the second simplest solution, and expanding the communication wheel to include more prompts would go a long way in doing so. Whether people choose to exercise courtesy, however, will be something that is difficult to enforce. This video is already a lot longer than I anticipated it to be, so I'm gonna call it here before I start gushing about more ideas. I'll be keeping an eye out to see how this discussion goes, not just in this video, but on Reddit as well, just to see how things develop over time. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Varlets.